Good morning, Skallywags, and welcome to another episode in a series of enigmatic events. I'm Spoo.
I'm AJ.
You know, sometimes a night out with friends can be the perfect way to alleviate stress. Maybe unwind from a long, hard week. Forget about the stress of bills or kids or obligations or sometimes just life in general.
You're making me want a day out.
All right. Maybe not one like this, though.
No. In 2011, a particular night like that, one that started out as fun, turned into a living nightmare. A nightmare that is still going on today. One where one friend has just vanished.
Lauren Spierer was born in Scarsdale, New York on January 17th, 1991. In 2009, she moved to Bloomington, Indiana to become a student at Indiana University, where she studied textile merchandising. She already had a bit of a circle of friends established at IU after she met a couple of future students there at a camp years before. One of these future students, a boy by the name of Jesse Wolf, would later become Lauren's boyfriend.
On June 3rd, 2011, Lauren went out with a few of these friends. They ended up being at a sports bar in Bloomington called Kilroy's. By the end of the night, Lauren had vanished. Her disappearance remains unsolved to this day.
As mentioned, on the night of June 3rd, 2011, 20-year-old Lauren Spierer went out drinking with a few friends. Jay Rosenbaum, David Rohn, Mike Beth, and Corey Rossman were all involved. Her boyfriend Jesse did not come with them on this particular night. Over the course of the evening, according to witnesses, Lauren was very intoxicated, staggering back and forth as she walked, stumbling, falling several times, highly intoxicated.
After she was reported missing, police actually put together some surveillance tape from the area where she was the night of her disappearance, and they have a timeline that they have kind of pieced together. And this is what the timeline shows.
At 12:30 a.m., witnesses say that Lauren left her apartment with her friend, David Rohn. The pair went to Jay Rosenbaum's apartment where she met up with Corey Rossman and Mike Beth, they being Rosenbaum's neighbor. Here they had a few drinks before heading out to the bar, sort of a pre-game sort of situation.
At 1:30 a.m., Corey Rossman and Lauren are seen on tape walking to Kilroy's bar. They actually arrived at 1:46 a.m. and they were there for approximately 41 minutes.
Then at 2:27 a.m., Lauren is seen exiting the bar with Corey Rossman. Lauren actually left her cell phone and her shoes behind at the bar. She had taken her shoes off to go out to sort of a sandbar area that they had at the bar and just never went back to put them back on.
Yeah, that kind of tells you she was pretty drunk.
Yeah. Rossman and Lauren actually then walked back to Lauren's apartment.
At 2:30 a.m., Lauren is seen entering Smallwood Apartments where she lived. A neighbor passerby named Zach Oakes notices Lauren and Corey and notices that they are very drunk. Lauren is staggering and falling over and everything. He also stated that he didn't like the way that Corey was handling Lauren, and he actually asked if she was okay. At this point, Corey then mouths off some sort of smart,
Typical drunk guy, yeah.
remark, and Zach actually hits him. Corey then has, the split lip, but he says he doesn't remember this incident or anything after this incident for the rest of the night.
And we'll get back to that fact here in just a little bit. At 2:48 a.m., Lauren and Corey are seen walking into an alley near Lauren's apartment. The alley runs between Morton Avenue and College Street. Security cameras then show them exiting this alley at around 2:51, where they then walk towards an empty parking lot. Both of them still stumbling and staggering everywhere that they're walking. Lauren, again, falls over at least 3 or 4 more times. And over the next couple of days, they would actually find Lauren's purse and her keys left behind in this alley. Again, showing you exactly how intoxicated she was.
Also, just to note, she still doesn't have shoes on in these videos. So she went home and didn't get another pair of shoes. So I'm just saying, girls in their shoes. It's pretty drunk. A short time after they go through this empty parking lot, they arrive at Corey's house where he shares an apartment with his roommate, Mike Beth. Now, Mike is already at the house. He's been there all night while they were at the bar. Mike said when they arrived, Corey had the lip cut and he was stumbling and very intoxicated. So much so that he did what any good roommate would do. He escorted him to bed. But yeah, Corey actually
didn't quite make it.
yeah, he actually vomited on the stairs going up to his room. Mike said that at this point he tried to persuade Lauren to just stay there, sleep it off and everything, but she wasn't having it.
Yeah.
She actually just wanted to leave. She was wanting to return to her own apartment is what she told him.
So then at 3:30 a.m., Mike phones his friend Jay Rosenbaum, who again is his next door neighbor and another friend of theirs, asking if he can kind of take care of Lauren. Mike states that before Lauren left, she was adamantly trying to convince him to come back with her to her place so that the two of them could continue drinking.
So somewhere between 3:30 when Mike had called Jay and 4:30, Lauren actually arrives at Jay's house. He noted that she had a bruise under her eye that he asked about. She didn't know how she got it. But again, I feel like she probably got it falling down.
Yeah, it's been noted that she's fallen over several times at this point, so it could have come from anywhere.
Right. And then Lauren says she still wants to go home. She's still trying to make her way back to her house. But before she leaves Jay's apartment, she actually makes 2 phone calls. One of these calls was to David Rohn, the friend from earlier that night who had started the evening with them. And then one was to an unnamed friend that we couldn't find the name in actually any of the reports.
Never been identified.
Yeah. But neither people picked up. It just rang. There was no messages left or anything like that.
At 4:30 a.m., Jay states that after again trying to convince Lauren to stay at his place and sleep it off, Lauren finally leaves his apartment. This is actually the last reported sighting of Lauren. Jay says that the last time he saw her, she was headed south at the intersection of 11th Street and College Avenue, headed south on College. She was still barefoot, wearing black leggings and a white t-shirt.
Later that morning, Jesse sent a text to Lauren's phone, and he got a strange response. He actually got a response from someone who worked at the bar, saying that she had left her phone and her shoes. So Jesse and his roommate decided to go look for Lauren and head to her apartment. When they got there, they found no signs of her, and so they immediately went straight to the police station to file a report.
Lauren's parents arrived in town the following day, and the search for Lauren began. Hundreds of people actually joined in on the search, and the case ended up actually getting national news coverage. A $100,000 reward was put up for Lauren's safe return. However, unfortunately, something that will become a trend in this case, the search came up with absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, they did find her purse and her keys and things like that in the alleyway, but beyond that, it came up completely empty.
2 months later in August, the police actually start a 9-day search in the Sycamore Ridge landfill area. This is in Pimento, which is south of Terre Haute, and they were looking for clues for this disappearance. This landfill is actually where the trash from Bloomington ends up. Like, this is where they do a non-stop thing and they take all the trash there.
It's one of those kind of central landfills where it actually comes from multiple cities.
Little towns and stuff.
Yeah, and they all end up in one place.
The Bloomington Police Department, the Indiana University Security Police Department, and the FBI were all involved in this search, and yet again nothing was found. Nothing came up.
Now, I should state here that the rest of this is going to be kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit, and that's mainly just because of there was really no good way to describe it other than there's just so many little random things that start happening in every possible direction. So there's no real timeline that will make sense of it all, instead of like, this happened, which will explain this thing that actually happened before, and then after, so on and so forth. So
it's a lot of little
prepping.
It's like a lot of little pieces of a puzzle that has a lot of pieces missing.
Right.
And so it's just here and there. After the actual timeline of the events of the night that were put together from surveillance, it's all about hearsay and what people remember.
It's like if you have a series of books and you read chapter 2 and something happens in chapter 2 that doesn't make any sense at all until you read chapter 6 or 7. It's kind of like that. Yeah. So we're just going to read you chapter 6 or 7 first and then go back to chapter 2 so that it makes more sense when we get there. So
that was a lot of explaining.
That being said,
Let's
move on. On the night of Lauren's disappearance, something that kind of piqued some interest was a white pickup truck that was seen on several security cameras that was just kind of circling the neighborhood. Obviously, with Lauren disappearing, they wanted to know who that truck belonged to, and turns out it was owned by a man named James McLish, who actually was a convicted felon who had just been released on parole for assaulting his ex-wife. He was actually now, at the time, living in a halfway house that was about 10 minutes away from where Lauren disappeared from. One of James's acquaintances, another person living at that halfway house, actually went to police and said that James killed Lauren.
Initially, police actually discounted this. They didn't take it seriously at all. But a private investigator actually suggested that James take a polygraph test.
Yeah, might want to get ahead of this.
And he did. He actually took a polygraph test, and this was done actually on television. This was done on an episode of 2020. So there was no hiding the results or anything like this. It was done.
Which really bothers me a lot. I mean, it kind of makes me wonder if anyone ever... Did this guy really claim that James killed her, or was this just James trying to get some attention?
Yeah, because he did get a lot of attention.
I mean, it was on 2020.
It was on 2020. He did, however, pass the polygraph, and there's no, evidence that says he was doing anything but driving his truck. Yeah. After the polygraph test, things kind of quieted down a little bit in the case, but as of May 2013, investigators had received over 3,060 tips in this case.
And I mean, that's what, 8 years ago almost now. Yeah. So you can only imagine what that number is up to now. Fast forward a couple of years to January 28th of 2016. The FBI and the Bloomington Police Department actually raided a home in a town called Martinsville that is about 20 miles north of Bloomington. Basically, the whole raid was connected to a man that was accused of exposing himself to a number of women in the area. Something about this particular case kind of piqued their interest as far as the Lauren case was concerned, so cadaver dogs were actually brought out to do a search of the property. And once the dogs had kind of finished doing their work, they did do some digging and do some sifting through dirt. So apparently the dogs found something or locked on to something.
They hit on something.
Right.
It could just be a drop of blood, but it's something.
Right. Unfortunately, much like every other possible lead in this case, they found absolutely nothing. Or I guess what I should say is that investigators would not specify if they found anything of any significance. But again, this was 5 years ago now, so we would have heard something.
If they would have found
anything significant.
If they would have found like a body or anything that connected Lauren, I think we would have heard. I hope so for her parents' sake. But, yeah. While on the property, investigators actually did tow a white truck. Now, this isn't the same white truck that was found in the surveillance, different white truck.
Not the James McLish truck.
No. This truck was actually connected to a 35-year-old named Justin Wagers. Justin actually lives on the property with his mother and stepfather until his arrest later on for something we couldn't find it
just said until his last arrest. So the way that I took it to mean is when this truck was taken away from the property, he already no longer lived there.
Right.
He lived there until he was arrested the last time he was arrested, and then he moved away after that.
And the way I took it is that Justin was the one who was exposing himself to the women.
Right.
And then they went out and searched his house.
Right.
So we don't know for sure.
Don't know for sure. The only reason that part's even in this case whatsoever is because that they brought the cadaver dogs out thinking that maybe they had found something, but turned out to be nothing. So
right.
Yeah.
And they did take a truck.
One of those little things. Yeah.
Yeah, because when they take something, it just usually means there's something.
Yeah.
There.
But again, we never found out what or why.
Nope.
Just that they did.
Yeah.
For that matter, as far as the actual investigation goes, that's the last thing we know about.
Yeah.
5 years later, that's the last thing we know. However, that being said, as far as speculation goes,
there's a lot of that.
There's a ton.
Now, Lauren's parents have come out and they say that they actually believe that their daughter is dead, which I think would be heart-wrenching to actually say that. But they do believe that the night that she went missing, based on the level of intoxication and the way she was struggling to stay upright, that they actually think that she was drugged at the bar.
See, when I first got into this case, I had the exact same suspicion.
If you watch the surveillance footage, it is very much not your typical drunk girl.
I mean, a drunk person will kind of wobble some, you know. I mean, it's someone who's just completely gone, you know, will have some trouble. She almost seemed like she had trouble staying upright in general.
Very dazed-like, too. Like
very out of it, yes.
Out of it. And so they actually think that she was drugged at the bar.
Well, then there's some other possibilities there, too, which we'll touch on here in a second. The family has also expressed their suspicions about all of the men involved that night. So Jay, Corey, all of those guys, even Jesse, even the boyfriend, even though he wasn't even there with them. And it's interesting to note that all of these men, including Jesse, have all refused to take a police-issued polygraph test. They also, every single one of them, retained lawyers almost immediately following Lauren's disappearance.
So Jesse actually, started the search. He's the one who reported her missing, and he was very involved with the search for like 2 days. And then his parents actually came and pulled him from the search. And that, seems weird.
It actually goes as far as to say they took him away.
Yeah, they pulled him from the
out
search,
of town kind of thing.
Jesse wasn't with Lauren that night. He is actually stated that he was at home watching the NBA Finals, and friends of his have said they don't think that he would harm Lauren at all. But it is weird, like if your girlfriend goes missing and you've known her for years, that your parents take you out of that.
Well, there's a couple of things, and we'll get to this again. I know this is probably the third or fourth time I'm saying we'll get to that. But his parents, I kind of feel like they didn't exactly have the highest of opinions about Lauren.
Yeah.
And you'll understand why here in a couple of minutes. But I'm wondering if maybe that is why they pulled him away, or the fact that everyone immediately looks at the boyfriend, obviously.
Right.
And the parents already saying that they're suspicious of them, of all the guys and him. So I'm wondering if maybe that's why they pulled him out. It still doesn't look good.
No, 2 days
doing
after
that.
Yeah, 2 days after your girlfriend goes missing, and you just stop helping with the search. It does look bad.
Yeah, but it would actually end up being Corey Rossman that did the most amount of insane stuff here and ended up getting the most amount of suspicion for what he did, or didn't do, I should say.
Right.
Not only was he the one that was with Lauren the most that night, there was also the encounter with the neighbor where he got punched in the face. Yeah. And again, that was for the way he was handling Lauren. We didn't get any kind of explanation as to how was he
No, it was just handling,
it,
which doesn't sit right with me when somebody says they're handling
obviously
someone.
Being very inappropriate, I'm assuming.
Right.
But literally from day one, Corey started acting pretty strangely. He did not help in the search, and he flatly refused to even speak to Lauren's parents.
Yeah.
Wouldn't speak to her parents. He wouldn't speak to the media. He wouldn't speak to police. He just shut everyone out and just said no.
I mean, he lawyered up and just like...
Yeah. I think one time he went on camera basically just saying, I hope they find her and we miss you. And, something to that effect. And that was basically it. He attributes a lot of this to what we mentioned earlier, and we said we'd get back to this. He attributes a lot of this to the fact that he doesn't remember anything that happened after he got punched. That is his excuse for at least most of this. He doesn't want to say anything because he doesn't know anything.
Right.
That kind of thing.
While Lauren's parents haven't actually accused any of the guys of anything, like they haven't said this guy did this or this guy did that, they do believe that they all know more than they're saying, including Jesse.
Right.
And as far as the guys not taking polygraph test. They actually say that they didn't take the polygraph test because they don't trust the Bloomington Police Department.
I mean, I can understand that to an extent, I guess, but if you got nothing to hide, you cooperate. That's what you do.
Well, speaking of that, they actually did take polygraph tests. It was just private polygraph, and then some of them did some through the FBI, but not with the town's police department. They actually claim that their distrust of the police department is the reason why they all retain lawyers, the reason why they didn't help with the search. They've never come out and said what made them mistrust the police department that much, but it's a thing for all of them.
Yeah. And as we kind of mentioned before, or at least alluded to it anyway, it turns out that Lauren may not have been quite as sweet and innocent as her parents want to believe that she was. Regarding her level of intoxication, Lauren's friends and Jesse, they pretty much all told the investigators that she also was pretty big into using drugs, and that she had been using drugs in addition to drinking the night of her disappearance. Jesse's mother, she also alleged that Lauren was actually asked to leave the summer camp that she had gone to, where she met Jesse and everybody else, because of drug use. Basically, she was doing drugs at the camp, got caught, and was asked to leave.
I'm going to say this just as a mom. There has not been any actual evidence of that's why she was asked to leave the camp or that she was asked to leave the camp. That is just Jesse's mother's perception of what happened. And Jesse's mother is quoted as saying, "This poor little girl is not with us today because of her drug abuse." I feel like maybe she has a little bit of a shaded view of Lauren, right. And I want to put that out there. This girl has gone missing. Her family is looking for her. We are not accusing her of doing these. We're just putting out the statements of all these people. As for Jay Rosenbaum, he told investigators that Lauren had not only consumed a lot of alcohol that night, but she had also snorted cocaine and had crushed up Klonopin tablets.
It's an anti-anxiety. It's basically Xanax sort of thing.
See, I don't know anything about that. But that she had done that on the night that she had been drinking and disappeared. So,
and if that is true, then it actually would turn out to be considerably more dangerous, because Lauren also has or had a pretty rare heart condition. It's something that's called long QT syndrome, and this is something kind of breaking the story here for a second. This is something we did not anticipate. This is something that total bizarre coincidence. On Tuesday, we did the story of Branson Perry and made mention in that episode that he had the same heart condition that I've dealt with my whole life, the tachycardia. Well, turns out I actually had this exact heart condition as well. I had surgery for it when I was 14 years old. Basically, there is kind of an electrical impulse that goes from the top to the bottom of the heart that causes it to beat in rhythm. But the conduit that runs through, there's a branch, and that little electrical impulse will get caught in that branch and begin to loop, which will cause the heart rate to speed up and beat irregularly. And when we say speed up, people tend to think like, oh, it must be beating like 100 beats a minute. No, we're talking on machine, like on a heart monitor at the hospital. I clocked out at 310 beats a minute. And that was not the fastest it ever went. That's just the fastest on a heart monitor. So for her to be doing any kind of drugs whatsoever,
on top of alcohol,
and which thins the blood,
right? It's going to cause, because alcohol thins your blood, so it goes through faster. So that's why you have the heart racing when you get drunk.
Right.
I've never been drunk, but I've heard. It's a true thing, guys. But I've heard. But you didn't actually know this. Like, no. I did the research for this, and then when he was typing
I had heard the story. I mean, I was familiar with the story, but I didn't know anything about the heart condition or especially what kind of heart condition it was.
Yeah.
So when I got in there and saw that blew my mind that 2 episodes in a row
of two people who disappeared without a trace.
2 people who vanished, and they both just happen to have the 2 heart conditions that I've dealt with in my life.
It makes it hit a little close to home for you.
It does. It does. But yeah, like I said, just had to break in and say that just because I thought it was the coincidence just completely blew my mind. I mean, what are the odds of that? But again, back to the story. Just had to throw that in there. So sorry.
But that being said, the point of that is the fact that she knew she had this heart condition, and any drug use on top of alcohol, on top of another drug, becomes very dangerous, not just to a normal person, but very dangerous to her.
I mean, with this heart condition, I wasn't even allowed to drink caffeine or even so much as to eat chocolate because it contained a small amount of caffeine. So drugs, especially cocaine, stuff like that, uppers.
Yeah.
Horrible idea.
She would have known not to do it. I'm not saying that she didn't do it. I'm just saying that it makes a very dangerous
She was making a very dangerous choice,
yes. Yeah. And speaking of that dangerous choice, police have actually addressed and followed up on rumors that she may have OD'd that night, and that her friends actually got scared, disposed of her body because they didn't want to, be accused of anything, and so they actually freaked out when she OD'd. However, a private investigator that was hired by Lauren's family says that he doubts that is actually a motive or what happened.
It doesn't make much sense.
No, I mean, she's a college student. Like he said, drugs are kind of everywhere. And
Bloomington apparently is pretty, especially the college there, I guess, is
it's just kind of, you can find it anywhere. So he doubts that would be motive enough, or that these guys would be scared enough if she had accidentally OD'd to cover up that kind of death. But you never know.
Yeah.
You never know.
I mean, they're intoxicated. People who are intoxicated make dumb decisions.
They do.
So it may have been by the time they realized what they were doing, it was too late.
Which is why I never drink. I don't want to make dumb decisions. It's a true thing. That being said, Lauren did have a history with public intoxication. In 2010, in September, she was actually arrested for public intoxication and illegal consumption.
Lots of rumors love to pop up around things like that.
But what wasn't a rumor was that police actually did find a small amount of cocaine in Lauren's house. That adds to that a little bit too.
Right. But sticking with their suspicions, Lauren's parents, just a short time later, they actually filed a civil lawsuit against Corey, Jay, and Mike. The suit said that basically they were negligent in that they gave her alcohol after she was obviously visibly intoxicated, and then also neglected to make sure that she made it home safe, which ultimately led to her death. Basically, the parents have said that they hope that this lawsuit will kind of trigger something with these guys to kind of motivate them to come forward with more information about that night than they have given thus far. Lauren's mother has actually gone on record stating, quote, "I truly don't think it was a random abduction. I think that someone that Lauren knew was responsible for the events of that evening." As part of the lawsuit, they actually subpoenaed private cell phone records and academic records leading back like 3 or 4 months. I think it was 134 days before Lauren's disappearance. And the guy's lawyers basically, they look at this, and I think they even called it a fishing expedition.
It was.
Basically just they're reaching to whatever lengths that they can to get something. Which, I mean, as
You're
a parent, I understand completely.
Yeah.
But what if you're looking in the wrong direction while someone else is getting away scot-free,
I mean, you're fishing for whatever information you can get
True.
at that point.
True.
And these are the last people who saw their daughter.
Right.
So, I mean, as a mom, I get it. I
Yeah.
would probably go fishing too.
But again, it is important to note here that none of the friends have even been called a person of interest in Lauren's disappearance. They're not suspects. Police do not believe that they are in any way responsible for it.
Or they haven't said.
Right. If they do feel that, they have not come out and said it publicly.
In regards to the suit, in 2013, a judge actually dismissed the case against Mike Beth, saying that he had no obligation to care for Lauren. He wasn't with her throughout the night, and he only saw her for that brief time while she was at his house. In 2014, the same judge actually dismissed the case against the other two men, and she is quoted as saying, "Unfortunately, there could be any number of theories as to what happened to Lauren, but what, if any, injuries she may have sustained. Without evidence to prove these theories, it would be impossible for a jury to determine if whatever happened to her was a natural and probable consequence of her intoxication without any other intervening acts that would break the chain or the causal chain." In other words, we don't know what happened to Lauren.
Right.
So yes, she was very intoxicated, but is that the reason she went missing? We don't know. And the judge is basically saying we can't hold these guys accountable for something that we don't know what happened.
And we can't hold them accountable for her death when we don't truly know that she's dead.
Right. It's a hard one. And as a parent, it's a hard one. As a judge, I think it was probably a hard one. But you can't hold somebody accountable for somebody else being intoxicated.
Right. Can't find someone guilty of I don't know.
Yes. But Lauren's parents have actually appealed the ruling, and they are proceeding with it. The three men, they have lawyers, and the lawyers said that they have actually cooperated with police and Lauren's parents and giving all the information they have about that night. All of them have passed the private polygraphs. That was really hard to say. Passed the polygraph.
Passed the private polygraph.
Legal representation for both Mike Beth and David Roan have said they've been interviewed and have said everything. They have given all the information that they have.
The police in the case have also basically said that they haven't ruled out other possibilities, such as, she was abducted by a stranger. In fact, in April of 2015, the Bloomington Police Department announced that they were investigating a possible link to another disappearance in the area. In fact, she was another Indiana University student named Hannah Wilson. And there are a number of kind of common threads between Lauren and Hannah. Hannah went missing on April 24th of 2015 after she left Kilroy's bar, the exact same bar that Lauren had been drinking at. She was last seen leaving the bar and getting into a taxi and driving away. Her body was actually found the following morning. Unlike Lauren, her body was found the following morning in Brown County, so just a short distance away. In fact, a local man named Daniel Messel, I'm hoping that's how that's pronounced, he was arrested for the murder after his cell phone was actually found near the body. However, in July of that same year, investigators came out and said that there are no ties between the two. Any similarities are completely coincidental, and beyond that, the two have nothing to do with each other.
But you know how we feel about coincidences.
Yeah.
Then once they start adding up, it's hard to ignore them.
Yeah. A coincidence or two is just a coincidence or two, but once you get more, it's a pattern. Another possible lead came from another IU student. His name was Corey Hammersley, so this is a different Corey now. Hammersley was once kind of a star athlete around Indiana University, and a star student for that matter, and then he kind of fell into Bloomington's drug scene. About a year after Lauren's disappearance, Hammersley kind of had a bit of a meltdown. He stripped down nude and started shooting at cops, which not a thing you want to do.
Just a small meltdown.
Yeah. Ended up getting shot twice himself so that they could kind of put a stop to his little rampage. This kind of earned him 24 years in prison.
While in prison, he was actually playing cards with another inmate when Lauren's story came up on the TV and her picture showed up. And he actually made a statement to this inmate. He knew who killed Lauren.
Or at least the other inmate claims that this happened.
The inmate claims that Hammersley told him that Lauren had been partying with friends, drinking, doing ecstasy, and she accidentally OD'd. That the friends got scared. They actually took her body to the Ohio River and dumped it. Police have said that they don't actually believe this story, but they did question him in prison. And he said this incident never happened. He doesn't know Lauren. He didn't know the story. He didn't see her picture in the television like it's a complete fabrication of this other inmate. And it actually stopped there. They didn't investigate it any further.
And basically that's pretty much it. So once again, we're left to ask the lingering questions. What happened to Lauren Spierer? Are her friends responsible?
Did Lauren die of an accidental overdose and her friends get scared and dispose of her body? Or at the very least, do they know more than they've actually said?
Could James McLish have anything to do with it?
Or does Daniel Messel have something to do with it?
What about Corey Hammersley? Could he be involved?
Much like many of the cases we've covered and are going to cover, we may never know the answers to these questions.
I mean, I would love to say that the friends have all acted suspicious. Her own boyfriend searches for 2 days before being taken away by his parents. All the guys refusing to get a police polygraph test because they've already had them done privately. All the guys getting lawyers right from day one just because they don't trust the police. It definitely raises some pretty big red flags.
Especially Corey Rossman. I mean, he knows more about the happenings that night than anyone else. He was with her the longest. He refuses to talk to her parents, even answer any questions. He does seem to have something to hide. Like he gives you that feeling that he is hiding something. What? We don't know.
Just like the rest of the questions, we may never know. But if you ask me, I would say that I agree with the parents, at least to the extent that they know something more than what they're saying. What that is, I don't know. Could it be just
drug use? Maybe they're afraid that if they come out and say they were using drugs with her, that
they're going to get busted for that?
I don't know.
What, you're going to get a slap on the wrist at worst, but you go and hide a body even after an OD, you're going to go to prison for quite a while.
Right. But if they were high on drugs while they did it, if they were like,
if I had to go with a theory, like what I believe happened, I feel like that's the most probable.
Right.
That she OD'd or her heart gave out or whatever. They were drunk, they were high, they did
freaked
something
out.
stupid. Yeah,
they
panicked and they acted on that panic and did something with her body.
Yeah.
And by the time that the realization set in of, oh, we could have just called 911 and we would have been fine.
Right.
It was already too late.
And it's a snowball going down the hill. It's just, you can't stop it. It's an avalanche now. I agree. I think that, especially with the cocaine found in her house and the story of ecstasy. I mean, what ecstasy does to your heart when you have a healthy heart is scary. If you have a condition like she does, that's deadly.
Plus, if she was, doing Klonopin at the same time, I mean, that's mixing uppers and downers, and I mean, that's just your system goes all over the place.
With the thin blood for...
So, my personal opinion, it's either that or it was just wrong place, wrong time, complete stranger saw her walking home and
took advantage of the fact that she didn't know where she was.
Right.
No matter what we can grasp from this case is that she was intoxicated. Her friends were also intoxicated. I can't hold them responsible for her if they themselves are inebriated. You can't. Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like that contributed to her disappearance, that contributed to her death, if that's the case. The drinking and possible drug use of that night, I feel, is the reason that she's gone.
Yeah. But what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below.
Be sure to follow us on all of our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. While you're on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, share, and most important, hit that subscribe button. It's just one little button. Yeah. You'll get to see all kinds of shows Monday through Friday. Every Tuesday and Thursday is this show. He does some shows Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So you get content every day. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything.
But most importantly, as we always say, please drop us a comment. Let us know your thoughts, your theories on what this case is all about. Let us know what you think happened. But most importantly, let us know what you would like to see next on a series of enigmatic events. Thanks for watching.
Bye.